Today we're going to be talking about James Cameron, who wrote a hard-hitting piece in Fortune magazine, and it said, if you want to fight climate change, stop eating meat. So it's pretty direct, pretty hard-hitting, and if you don't know him, he is a famed film director. He's directed like, what, Terminator 2?
Terminator 2, The Abyss. That was a big film when it came out. That was more of an 80s film.
Avatar.
Avatar. That's two of the biggest grossing films ever. Titanic, Avatar.
What was your favourite?
And Aliens, man.
One of the speakers at the event was filmmaker, explorer, and environmental activist James Cameron, probably most famous for Oscar winners Titanic and Avatar. And James Cameron, that one and only, joins me now live from LA.
You know, we've got this big crisis with the Syrian refugees pouring into the EU. So you've got this big, immigrant refugee crisis. Well, that's caused by the rise of ISIS and the collapse of Syria as a state. It's now a failed state. Well, why? It all began as a result of a drought. Farms collapsed. 1.5 million farmers moved off their farms into the cities. The government didn't help them. They had no jobs. They rose up to challenge the Assad regime. It resulted in a civil war. And now we have one of the biggest crises in the global map right now as a result of an unprecedented drought that researchers are now connecting to climate change.
People think, what's food got to do with climate? Well, this is the big elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. When people think of how we mitigate climate change, they initially think of, coal-fired power plants and tailpipe emissions. Okay, you're good. There's a missing middle, because greater than the entire transportation sector of the entire world is animal agriculture. So here's a place where we can make a huge personal difference, you, me, everybody out there. We don't have to wait to build wind farms. We don't have to wait to build solar plants. We can just change what we eat. Just eat less meat and dairy, and your carbon footprint drops way down. So I eat 100% plant-based. I'm not asking people to do that, but since I do, my water footprint is about half of, let's say, somebody who eats a standard American diet. My carbon footprint is about a third, and so I feel, not only is it making me healthier, but I feel I'm contributing to a healthier planet, and I've made that decision irrespective of what legislators do. And we can't wait for them. We need to take action ourselves.
Most people are not making the connection between the choices they make in terms of the food they eat and what that means for the sustainability of this nation and of the planet. And let me give you an example that most people don't know. When we think of climate change, we think of coal-fired power plants and tailpipe emissions, but the second biggest source of greenhouse gases is animal agriculture. Yeah. So if you cut down on meat and dairy, you're individually doing something right now to help the planet.
And then about this linkage, food and climate.
I've always been very conscious of our impact on the environment. I'm a child of the 60s, so you had the big oil spill in Santa Barbara that was on the cover of Time magazine in 1969. And even though I was living in Canada at the time, I became very aware. So I've followed this for a long time. The big epiphany for me around the food-climate connection was about 3.5 years ago, because I had known how heavy the footprint of animal agriculture is and how devastating it is. It's the greatest source of biodiversity loss. It's the greatest polluter of water, et cetera, et cetera. You go on down the list. It's horrific. But I thought, well, bummer, because I need to have my animal protein. That's just the way human beings are wired. 3.5 years ago, I found out that not only is that not true, it's actually the opposite. It's actually harmful to your body, and it contributes a lot to the kinds of diseases that we have, and so-called diseases of affluence like heart disease and diabetes and osteoporosis. And
plant-based eating has revolutionized our whole household, our whole view of ourselves. It was the first thing that actually gave me hope about rescuing the biosphere and preventing runaway greenhouse warming, because I didn't see a government that's been hijacked by the coal and oil and gas industry reacting quickly enough. I didn't see the populace who are being fed so much disinformation from rising up and forcing change from policymakers soon enough. And all of a sudden I realized, here's a handy thermostat that we can just turn it all down with. If things get bad enough and people realize it, they can literally make change immediately. Because carbon dioxide coming out of tailpipes is something that's going to be around for hundreds of years. It's got a half-life, active half-life of 100 years. Methane only 12 years. And methane is a big component of agricultural, greenhouse gases. So methane has a big warming effect. Some people say 25 times, some people say 75 times as CO2, depending on how you parse the timeline, but you can switch it off in 12 years. So that's pretty amazing.
So I thought, wow, this is a win-win. I just cut out all the meat and dairy. I'm doing my thing for the environment, and I'm doing my thing for myself and my own longevity. And as a father, I need to be around to protect my family, So it just all added up. It was like, wow, where's the bad news in this story? There isn't any.
Let me ask you about Food Choice Task Force.
Yeah.
What is it? How'd you get involved with that?
Food Choice Task Force is jointly funded by my Avatar Alliance Foundation, which is a nonprofit, and Craig McCaw, the cell phone, comms mogul, friend of mine, and we're both vegan. And so we thought, all right, let's figure out a way to get the word out there. So the Food Choice Task Force is a small group of committed people who are hoping to get some media presence out there about these issues, because there isn't much. There's no sort of film you can go to. There are only a handful of books. There's not much out there, but the facts are so compelling.
Start a garden, grow some lettuce, grow some tomatoes. It's the easiest thing in the world. Eat your own. Watch a tomato grow and eat it. It's like, it's almost seemed miraculous to us in our society. And it's ludicrous. It's for the previous 10,000 years. A tomato was not miraculous, but to kids growing up in the city, watching something grow and then eating it seems like a miracle.
My Plate, My Planet.
My Plate, My Planet is an initiative of the Food Choice Task Force that we did around, recently here in the US, we had the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, right? So that's a bunch of scientists that the government gets together to tell the USDA and the Human Health and Services Group what they should be doing about food guidelines. And they do it every 5 years. And so this year they did something very unprecedented. These scientists came back and said, we need to put sustainability language into the guidelines. We need to understand this connection between our food choices and the environment and climate change. They made that link for the first time. And they also said, eat more plants and less meat and dairy for the first time. So we thought, all right, we need to roll in behind this. So we did a big publicity campaign around these guidelines. And we actually took, normally there's a comment period. Normally they get about 5,000 public comments. As a result of the My Plate, My Planet campaign, they got something like 35,000 public comments. Jeez. So now they have to actually listen to us.
Wow.
Us being the grassroots, because the leadership doesn't do anything without the grassroots being there first.
We're always talking about what are the action items when we make a documentary. What are we asking people to do? What are the changes they can make in their daily life? Well, I'm going to tell you one. I watched that film, Forks Over Knives. I went into the kitchen. I took everything out of the kitchen that was not a plant. And for 5.5 months, I've eaten only plants. No meat, no dairy, no eggs, no fish. As Sylvia's always saying, if you want to save the fish, just don't eat them. Right? I'm healthier, I've got more energy, my cardio endurance has about doubled. I used to run 20-25 minutes, I'm now running an hour. It's amazing, but setting aside the health benefits, how often do you get that kind of incredible win-win where you can really transform the planet? And it's possible. You got to check the facts for yourself. You're not going to believe it, hearing it from me. But I want to challenge everybody here. If you're an environmentalist, I say, my challenge is, you can't be an environmentalist. You can't be an ocean steward without truly walking the walk, and you can't walk the walk in the world of the future, the world ahead of us, the world of our children, not eating a plant-based diet. That's my challenge. You can check the facts for yourselves. And anyway, so